So we've identified that the LLMs we're seeing at the moment are great for proofs of concept and playing around and doing a lot of fun stuff. But as you know, something we think a lot about at Metaflow and Out of Bounds is how do you actually productionize machine learning models, and how do you incorporate the wisdom of machine learning into existing software stacks? So I'm interested in how can people actually productionize LLMs and incorporate them into their already pre-existing software stacks in their jobs currently, or thoughts about the future?
Yeah, I think like currently the best way to think about this is to use LLMs as not kind of maybe core components of the pipeline. It seems like the field is evolving so fast, and like we cannot always trust this kind of pipelines. And even as a researcher, we are struggling into understanding this kind of things in terms of like how they work. What I think it's really useful is to maybe use them as kind of like analytics tools for maybe your data, or even classification tools in which you can use them. Like, I don't know, if you have a conversational agent, you could use one of these large language models to do intent classification, and you can do predictive analytics. You can do many things. The thing I think, like, you can replace many steps of a pipeline with a language model. You can use them to do control flow. You can use them to do many things. One thing I think like we are probably going to talk about next, that I think it's very, very important, that I want to mention it now, is that we should treat LLMs as we treat software, in a sense that we have Q&A to test software, or like to stress test, and we should do the same with language models. So there should be someone in the team that kind of like tries to break the part of the pipeline we build with LLMs, because we know that there might be issue. And while software is kind of often rule-based, and so we can come up with reasonable flows of things that can happen, this is not true with language models that are by nature stochastic, so they can come up with kind of different replies. And this kind of models evolve over time. So the original ChatGPT is not the ChatGPT we have today. If you use the original ChatGPT API and you update it, you might not have the same result. So that could be like a breaking update in your in your kind of stack. So I would
you lose reproducibility, which is a basic tenet of science, right?
Yeah, you might have kind of still. I think like OpenAI give you the possibility to keep asking old model, but you're playing with an old technology. They might have fixed a couple of things. One issue is that, for example, ChatGPT knowledge in ChatGPT was, I think like the last kind of training data was from the end of 2021. So ChatGPT is not, let me use again an anthropomorphizing word, but like is not aware of recent things. So when they are then updated, you might want to update your language model too, or like your API too, because like you want the model to be aware of recent events. But that could be like a breaking operation. So that is why I think like we should always be, it's necessary to have a team that kind of like stress test every LLM integration.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I've also shared 2 links. You're aware of these posts, Federico, but I'll just share them very quickly. That we've thought about this a lot, and this is in some ways shameless self-promotion, but it is highly relevant, thinking through the future of the infrastructure stack for large language models. I'm not going to go through it in detail now, but really once we have things that are possible, such as large language models, how do we make them easy for everyone to use with infrastructure? And the way we think about it is that data scientists care a lot about what's happening at the top and not what's happening at the bottom, but they want access to the infrastructure. Both these things are exacerbated with large language models. We really care about the modeling, but we do have a significant amount of infrastructure needed still. And then what we see happening in the space, and there are lots of different types of things we're seeing. We see open source foundation models that maybe we then want to fine tune for different business concerns. with LLM embeddings. And then we, on the other side, we see perhaps we want to just, buy APIs and use them and pay per token or whatever it is from vendors. So there are a lot of different use cases here. And I shared another post, which is, this is relatively a high level post, how we think about productionizing things using Metaflow. And we did this using Databricks. We productionized it and trained it using it was Databricks open source foundation model Dolly. So that's just a bit of context on how we're thinking about things there, and a bit of quote unquote shameless self-promotion. But I posted those things in the chat for those interested.